Yeah, I mean, I think it was a head scratcher all the way around. You know, it's like having another kid, right? So.
Welcome into Backstretch Banter on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio Channel 90. It is Roush Fenway Keselowski's hour that we get each and every week right here on Sirius XM. I am Chris Childers, and I am joined today by RFK's Mike Massaro, and we have a great guest with us. He has been a staple on this show since we started it last year, one of our favorite guys to talk to about all things RFK, the competition director for Roush Fenway Keselowski. Josh Shell is our guest. It is a new season. We have not had him on this year, so fun to pick his brain about the addition of the 60 car and how things have gone so far in the early goings of the 2025-2026 campaign. But things have been fantastic so far. When you look at the 17 and the 60, everybody's buzzing about the 60, so plenty to talk about. Josh, welcome back, man. How are you?
Good to see you. It's nice to be here for the first time this year.
It's a pleasure to have you, and we're coming off Homestead, so we have plenty to talk about. We got a fun track on the horizon that we'll dive into as well this week, but I got to know for you, we talked so much last year about what it took to be the competition director for the 6 and the 17. This year, you've added the 60, so more responsibility, a third more, and things have gone really well up to this point for Ryan Preece and company. How different, if at all, has the job been for you adding another team to the fold?
Oh, no, it's definitely different. I mean, it's, it's like having another kid, right? So Ryan and all the guys have done a great job. Really proud of how that group's come together. Certainly, from the announcement of bringing that car online to putting the team together, it certainly came together later than we would have liked. So kind of felt like we're up against it a little bit towards the end of last year. And all things considered, I don't know that we could have asked for much more to start the year here.
It really seems like the story gets better and better and better every week with the 60 team. We talked about it last week with Derek Finley on the show. This is a group of guys who some of them didn't even know each other's names in December. They came together. They're in the shop. They have gelled so quickly. And lo and behold, we've got Ryan Preece with back-to-back top 10 finishes. And now he goes to a place he's incredibly familiar with, not only, on this side of things in the Cup Series, but going back to his days in the Modified Series. Yep. This is a track that seems like it really plays to his strengths.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, even in the years past when overall maybe, Ryan hadn't had the performance he wanted at even a Homestead or a Vegas or somewhere like that, Martinsville's been a strength for him. So I think with where that team's at and where our cars are at right now, I'm certainly excited and optimistic for this weekend.
And good reason for it. Last week, Derek Finley said he was so excited about Miami because him and Ryan had done some testing out there, and it was the only track they had their own information.
Yep.
And he said, I think it's going to pay off. It certainly did as he finished in the top 10. And I think all of us are really just kind of curious right now of what's going to happen week to week with this new car. And you mentioned Martinsville being a track that's strong for Ryan Preece. That adds a little extra with the fact that he's been top 10 the last 2 weeks. For you as the competition director, has it made your job, I don't know if fun is the right word, but more interesting, getting to know new people and getting to work with different people and really putting together something from scratch, which is what you guys did this year?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been fun to watch. It's certainly been different. I've told people before the challenge for me is, at the end of the day, you only feel as good as kind of your worst car's day. But certainly been really proud of the effort of all of our teams, and everyone's worked together exceptionally well, all pulling together and trying to make the whole company better. So really proud of the effort of all of our teams.
So you only feel as good as your worst team when you walk away. I can't avoid the elephant in the room, I suppose. The 6 car.
Yep.
Finished 26th. What was your assessment of their day?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a head scratcher all the way around. Certainly, if you look at practice times, practice results, I felt like all of our cars were were pretty close together and felt like we'd be in a reasonable place for the race. Certainly for the 60 and the 6 qualifying didn't go exactly how we would have wanted. The day that the 60 was able to have from where they qualified is honestly, I think, what we all expected for all the cars. So, some challenges there. We're working through that. Start of the year for the 6 car hasn't been what anybody's wanted. I think Homestead notwithstanding, it hasn't been for lack of performance. It's just been kind of some tough situations.
Mm-hmm.
So you just got to keep showing up every week and making the best of it, and eventually that stuff turns itself around over time.
Still a long way to go.
So
Absolutely.
early.
Yeah,
we're
for sure.
so early
For sure.
in the season. And what I would say, and I'm such a big fan of the number 6 car, and I'm such a big fan of Brad and everybody on that team, and we've got to know them, the last year plus on the team. Here's the good news. The cars are running well. These are good cars. So you make a couple adjustments, you do a couple of things. Guess what? Now you're running top 10. All is well. You're happy. It's a long season. And I think that's the beautiful thing right now. There's so much evidence that the team, there's a lot of good. So you make a couple adjustments and you try to figure it out. And I have no doubt in my mind, based on what's happened with the 17 and the 60, that this team's going to be crushing it on all cylinders at the end of the year. And I'm saying that as a fan. I'm not in the garage every day with you guys, but you can just tell that RFK has it together. Yeah. I mean, really, and there's going to be bad luck and stuff like that, but I think it's really cool to see. I mean, you guys built a team with a driver, and a crew chief that hadn't done it, and it's crazy. And here they are, and they're having fun, and they're finishing in the top 10. This is what the sport's all about.
I mean, it truly is the best.
RFK has embraced that, Mike.
The 60 team, as you mentioned, Chris, it's just a remarkable story.
Oh my
It's a crazy, remarkable story. You just think about how new the team is, how high level they're performing. I think about their over the wall guys. Their over the wall guys are ripping off some incredibly fast pit stops. We talked about last week an 8.7 second stop.
Yep.
This week they topped it, 8.69.
Yep.
It's like they're competitive with their own numbers, right? They want to improve on those numbers every week, and those athletes are going to work and getting it done.
Yeah, they're doing a great job. And same thing with some of those guys. That came together a little bit late, and we've got some people that hadn't worked together before, and, man, they've all just dug in, and they're doing a great job right now.
It's amazing.
It really is amazing. It's fun to watch what's going on. And the 17 car just had a finish that was better than anybody this past week on the team. He finished P6. He's done a wonderful job, him and Graves, over the years. They seem to really have a good connection, a good chemistry. As a competition director, I'm sure that's something you noticed, the way those guys have gelled. Chris Buescher, last year, where would you say the 17 team is early on as we go to Martinsville? They have had a unique story, I think, to tell from 2 years ago and when he ripped off, a few wins in a row. Last year, all the expectations, and it was almost like he was tortured. I mean, he was tortured at the finish line. We had a finish that was literally the closest in the history of NASCAR at one point that Chris ended up on the wrong side of. But, I got to believe that they've kind of been through it all in the last 2 years. So where are they right now coming off of P6 there, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we talk about this around the road courses specifically, but I would say Chris Buescher has done Chris Buescher things all year long, right? Like he's not flashy and you may not hear a lot from him, but you turn around twice and get to the end of the race and he's right there in the top 5, top 10 somewhere. I know that group would like to score some more stage points. I think that would help in the points overall. And then certainly you just keep putting yourself in contention and I feel confident that group will get a win here sooner than later, but certainly before the year's out. So they seem to be headed in a good direction. And to your point, Chris and Scott have worked together for a long time now and have a really good relationship and understanding of what the other one needs. And they just, go out and execute week in and week out and get the finishes.
Chris Buescher doing Chris Buescher things. Explain that, Josh.
I mean, he just hangs around. Like it started with road courses, right? Road course qualifying hasn't been a strength here for a little while. That's not a secret. And, you start in the 20s and then you get to the end of stage 1 and you're in the teens. You get to end of stage 2, you're close to the top 10, and then you get to the end of the race, and sure enough, top 5, top 10, win, whatever it might be, and it's kind of a where did he come from sort of thing.
Sneaks up on you.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because I actually understood it without him having to explain. But as a Buescher fan, he's Chris Buescher, and he's got this way of kind of hanging around and and all of a sudden he's in the P10, and you're like, how the hell did he pull that off? But that's Chris Buescher, and what a great crafty driver that he is. You know, I'm curious for you guys, what is it like having sort of the unique geographic representations inside the garage in North Carolina? Because, you know, I always thought it was interesting. You had a guy from Texas, and, you know, and you don't have a ton of them, but you had a guy from Texas, you have a guy from Connecticut, and then you have a guy from Michigan inside that garage that make up RFK, which I think is kind of a unique collection of drivers. And, you know, we talked to Ryan in the past, and Mike, you know, about the Connecticut scene and kind of how that differs from Texas.
Right.
Do you see that show up in the teams, kind of the regional flair of some of these guys and the way that they, you know, really go about racing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, Ryan is a representation of what you think about from the Northeast modified racing scene, and kind of, you know, tough, competitive, do what you have to do to get the job done kind of thing. Chris is about as laid back as it comes, and Brad's somewhere in between.
Somewhere in between,
Yeah. Different personalities as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny. I think at the beginning of the show, you said it's like adding another child to the family. I know, having only 2 children, that they're both completely different, personality-wise. Have you noticed the differences in personalities in the camp now with the 3 drivers?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think, you know, what you see in the shop, in the meetings, all those things, really the guys are not much different when they're in the cars. You know, Ryan will probably get a little bit more fired up than the rest of the guys, but it's just a way of communicating. So, yeah, it's been really interesting.
I hear it on the radio too.
Yes, for sure.
Ryan is rather colorful at
Correct.
times. In a fun way, I think,
because he's
for
from
sure.
Connecticut.
Well, I don't know if that's the case, but whereas I think Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, is more analytical.
Yep.
And Chris just, you know, talks when he wants to, not very much.
And when Chris gets animated on the radio, you know it's serious and something important's going on, right?
Right.
So, is Brian? I don't know how I just took Brad and Ryan and mixed it into something, but when you look at Brad Keselowski, how, like, the way that they drive, I've heard Brad talk about racing, and he's very scientific. He's very, you know, he talks about the different this and that. And, you know, Ryan Preece to me seems like kind of a younger guy that's, I'm going to just get out there and race. And like you've mentioned, Buescher's kind of, you know, let's chill and do our thing and be, you know, kind of Texas cool. But from the way that they view the racetrack, from the way that they view what they do for a living, like I can look at quarterbacks in the NFL and they all kind of take it on a different way, yet they play the same position. How would you characterize, as the competition director, Josh, those 3 guys and kind of the way they view things? Is Brad more of the thinker as opposed to the other ones, like, or are they kind of the same?
No, I think that's fair to say. Brad's pretty analytical, puts a lot of thought into it. And certainly different than the other guys. I feel like Ryan still is a short track guy at heart, right? You'll see him at the track early, not necessarily right when the garage opens, but maybe earlier than some other guys at times. And same thing, Chris is, you know, kind of in the middle, not getting too far up, too far down, but is reliable and shows up and does the job that you need him to do when you need him to do it, and at a high level.
And to your point, Ryan was the first at the drivers' meeting this week.
I saw that
on social media. Yeah. Prompt. Just the way the season is going as a whole, are you seeing any trends?
You know, it's interesting. We're 6 races in or whatever, and I feel like we're just starting to get a read on, you know, where our group's at, where other groups are at, relative. You know, we've run a road course, we've run a short track, run a couple intermediates. So I think Yeah, I think you're starting to get a view of where everybody is. I think we still have some work to do. We're not quite where we want to be, but we're not in a bad position. Certainly, like the 20 car knocking off a few wins right to start the year was impressive and not something I think we were expecting to see. But yeah, I think over the next few weeks you'll really get a clear idea of where everybody's at.
Long season ahead of us. It is getting fun, though, and RFK had a lovely week this past weekend for the most part in Miami, hoping for even better results. It would be great to see us in victory lane this week in Martinsville. We'll talk more about the upcoming race. Josh Shell is our guest, the competition director at Roush Fenway Keselowski. We'll continue this conversation when we come back right here on Backstretch Banter with RFK on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90. We're back on Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90. I'm Chris Childers, joined by Mike Massaro of Roush Fenway Keselowski, and our guest today is the competition director at RFK, Josh Shell. We spent a good amount of time a minute ago talking about Homestead, Miami, and what went well for the 60 car and the 17. Hoping that this week all three cars have a heck of a week. It would be cool to see all three P10 there at Martinsville, but a completely different track, completely different way of doing things. We've talked before about how Ryan Preece loves this track. The vast majority of laps that he's led in his career have been on this one. Sometimes it works out, sometimes not. You need a little lady luck on your side. But when you look at Martinsville and what you've done already this week, and it's early in the week as you prepare to take the cars there this weekend, give us an idea of just the difference of what your team is doing and the preparation going from Miami to Martinsville from last week to this week, Josh.
Yeah, I mean it's completely different, right? Homestead, you're focused on your aero performance and maximizing your attitude and making as much downforce as you can, and Martinsville is really 180 from that. You've got to be able to get into the corner, use a lot of brake, make sure that your car turns well, and that it takes good care of the tires. So it's pretty much night and day. The underbody rules package is different from short tracks to intermediates, so pretty completely different train of thought, and couldn't be much more different from one week to the next.
While we're making comparisons, not just comparing Miami and the approach there to the approach you take at Martinsville at a short track, how about comparing what it takes to prepare this generation car to, say, the generation car 5 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely different. With the older cars, we would have Martinsville-specific car builds that the chassis might be lighter, the body was hung in a different way, or you had a different cooling package or whatever it might be. Now you could race the same car at Daytona that you race at Martinsville, right? So yeah, it's definitely a different thought process, different approach. And with this car in general, you're just working in much smaller, tighter windows than ever you would have had to in the past. So yeah, it's pretty different.
Martinsville, to me, just from the outside looking in, has always been a mechanically challenging racetrack, trying to keep the brakes on the car, trying not to, burn up the rotors and things like that. Do you still experience that kind of thing?
Not as much with, the next gen car between the 18-inch wheels and the brakes that go along with that, and some of the tire changes. It's not as hard on the brakes as it has been in the past, but certainly you've got to conserve your car and take care of it and make sure you have everything you need to perform at the end when they hand out the clock.
So what are your concerns going there? Like just from mechanically speaking?
I think probably, the tire wear is always the unknown. We've gone to Martinsville lots of times with same tires, different tires. Weather conditions seem to have a pretty big impact on whether the track rubber's in or not. So I think that's probably my biggest question is what the tire wear is going to be like, and will we see a green flag cycle or not? And then obviously this race is 400 laps compared to the 500 that we have in the fall. Then that always seems to make a little bit of difference as well.
Yeah, I would imagine that it does when you take 100 laps in a different direction off of it. Josh Shell, our guest, the competition director. We've talked a lot about the next gen car over the last year and a half on the show. I don't know if we've ever asked this question, and I think the competition director would be the perfect person to ask it to, because we've talked so much about how it's different, and we've talked so much about single lug and pit crews and all that kind of stuff. But did the next gen car, in your opinion, as the competition director, did it accomplish its goal? They changed the car for a reason. Do you think they did what they intended to do from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think yes and no. I don't think it's a secret that the short track racing's maybe still got some work to do, and maybe not where everybody's wanted it to be, but certainly the mile and a half racing, and if you look at the race even at COTA with the finish there, the competition's as close as it's ever been. I do think there's probably more opportunity for more teams to be competitive, and you go to the track knowing that you at least have the same parts to work with as everybody else. So I think it's been a success from that side. The other thing I'd say is we've been able to prove the last few years that we can race just about anywhere in lots of different scenarios. We'll prove that again when we go to Mexico City here in the summertime.
yeah.
But
Yep.
between Bowman Gray, LA Coliseum, Chicago Street Course, we've proven with this car and everything we have now that you can really race just about anywhere there's a racetrack.
I would agree. And the competition's been great.
Yeah.
So I think that speaks for itself, Chris.
I think it's made it. I agree with what you said too. I think there's good and bad, but overall, I think when you look at the overall experience from a fan perspective, from is this enjoyable? Do I want to invest my money in it? Do I want to buy tickets? Do I want to buy merchandise? I think overall it's been improvement. I do. I think NASCAR is in a pretty good position, and they've done some good things moving forward. That's my opinion, but I wholeheartedly feel that as somebody who does spend money on merch and stuff like that. So I think we're in a good spot. With that said, we got Josh Shell as our guest, competition director, Roush Fenway Keselowski. They are working their butts off to get into victory lane. Last year we saw mixed success. The year before we were rocking and rolling. Year to year, it's kind of hard to. Well, let me ask you this. I'll ask you if it is hard. Last year, you guys had an entire season where it went certain ways, and really close in some respects, and the playoffs were the playoffs and all that. But can you take legitimately anything year to year, or is every single year an independent thing into itself?
No, I think you can. There's definitely things that carry over. I know for us on the Ford side, this is the first year we haven't had a body redesign, body change. So that's been helpful. That's probably allowed us to carry more over than maybe we have in the past. Certainly when the rules change or the tires change or those kinds of things, that resets your notebook a little bit. But no, absolutely. We've been able to carry things over and just kind of keep trying to get a little bit better at each event, each time we go back and address the issues we had before and try to improve on them.
The Ford side overall, do you guys feel pretty good about the vehicle, team to team? I don't know how much talk there was in the preseason from last year to this year, but is there an overall pretty satisfaction considering things didn't change much from last year to this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think so for the most part. If I just watch the races on Sundays, I feel like there's at least a Ford or a handful of Fords that are able to be competitive every week, whether that's an RFK car or a car from Penske. Obviously, Josh Berry got a win in the Wood Brothers car already this year. So that shows me and everybody else here and anybody that races a Ford that the potential's there, and we just have to execute all of our details to the highest level, and we can go compete with anybody.
And Chris, we should point out that Chris Buescher and Ryan Preece were the top two finishing Fords this weekend.
Yeah,
correct.
So how much pride do you take in that?
Absolutely. No, I mean that's always the first thing you look at is, okay, I know every other Ford has the same things to race with that I can. Did we go outperform those cars first? And then, if the Ford folks were sitting here, they'd tell you they want all the Fords to finish first through 10th or 12th or whatever it is.
Can't blame them.
No, absolutely. I want ours to be the first three in that line. So, yeah, as long as there's a Ford that's competitive, we know we can do it.
Well, we're
Do
seeing
you
that.
talk a lot as a competition director to the manufacturer? Is that the job is that a role you
Yeah.
have?
Yes.
So what do those conversations look like, and how much input are you giving them? And is this common amongst all competition directors for all the different teams and their manufacturers?
Yeah, I think so. There's a variety of things we'll talk about. It covers from, kind of big picture directional things on where we think the sport should go to, more Ford specific, whether it's aero items or engine development or all those kinds of things. So, yeah, pretty much cover the full spectrum of anything you can think of working with our partners at Ford.
How often during the season? I'm curious how this works. How often during the season as opposed to the preseason?
How often do we get
Like
together?
just the conversations with the manufacturer and what they're doing and what they can
Oh,
do to help you guys.
it's weekly at least, probably.
Okay, so it's constant
Yeah,
all
it's
year. Is what you're
absolutely.
saying.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely,
gotcha.
absolutely.
I just think that part of it's interesting because it's interesting that you have, okay, first you start with the cars, right? So you got the Toyota, the Chevys, and the Fords. Then you make your way down to the teams and the owners. Then you make your way down to the individual cars and the crew chiefs and the drivers. And, there's little nuances, but a lot of times you're working with similar stuff. It's fascinating. It really is. I mean, the whole sport and how it kind of is all set up, I think is fascinating. And that's why I think for people out there that are fans, it's kind of interesting to get some of the nuance of how it's all set up and done and who you guys are talking to on a daily basis. With that said, as the competition director, your role every week with the individual crew chief as they prepare their team. We talked about Graves. We talked about, Ryan Priest and his new crew chief and the relationships there. What are you doing with a crew chief, and how does your relationship have to be from a working standpoint with a individual crew chief for the 660 or the 17 car?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, the way I look at my job is to make sure that those guys have everything that they need to go compete for wins and championships and all that on a week in and week out basis. And if
you want to be the wind beneath their wings,
yeah, I mean, if there's something that they need, I look at it as my responsibility to go out and get it and to do whatever I can to let them focus on getting the most performance out of their car, their team, their driver, whatever it might be. And then beyond that, on the personal side, every relationship with every crew chief's a little bit different. Obviously, my relationship with Jeremy Bullins, with Brad being his driver, but also being one of our owners and my boss is a little bit different than my relationship with Scott Graves, right? So,
sure.
It's a little bit unique, and we work through that a day at a time. But yeah, number one is making sure those guys have everything that they need to go race.
Do you find that the crew chiefs, each one of them has different priorities, or maybe they lean on you in different ways?
Yeah, I think so. It's like anything. Different people have strengths and weaknesses, and some need more help in some areas than others. And the number one thing I try to do is just to be a sympathetic ear to listen at times, right? Like, I know nobody wants their car to perform more than they do, and when it doesn't, things don't go their way, I want to be able to try to help pick them back up and make sure we're ready to go the next week.
So some emotional support.
Yeah, a little
bit.
Yeah,
all right. As well as being an engineer.
Yeah,
it's an interesting mix.
Yeah,
it is an interesting mix.
Yeah, it's.
How did you know? Were you a part of the decision making to pick Derek Finley as the crew chief? For the 60, how did you know he was ready, prepared, up to the task? It's not like he had done it much. He had done it for stage 60, but it wasn't like he was doing it week to week. And he said he had to go home to his family and say, "Hey, they want me to do this." And they're like, "All right, I guess we're doing this now." But he wasn't, like, I'm sure, choice number one, although he's done unbelievable. How did you identify that Derek could do this job?
Yeah, I mean, Derek's been around forever. He's been around the sport longer than I have, and certainly didn't have a concern about his knowledge base or his level of experience or any of that. It more came down to, hey, do you really want to do this? Are you willing to commit to traveling again full time? I've only not traveled for a short time in my career, and it becomes pretty nice pretty quickly, and it's can be a challenge to talk people into coming back out on the road once they've kind of transitioned back to being at home. But no, Derek's done a great job and has been able to lead some of the younger, specifically some of the younger engineers we have in that team, and they're doing a great job right now.
And Chris, we talk about the personalities and how they've come together. Now, Derek Finley's had some really interesting things to say on the radio. This is how I get a glimpse into his personality. This past week, I mean, Ryan Preece even joked that they should make T-shirts out of this, and somebody might. Who knows if they hear this? But before the race even started, Derek Finley, in that deep voice that he has, just came over the radio and said, "Boys, expect to win. Don't think about it. Expect it." Yeah. And it was like a mantra, right? And so you think back to the days of Ray Evernham with the refuse to lose, and now I'm thinking this is the mantra for the 60.
Yep.
Expect to win.
Yep.
Right? So that was one thing. And the other one was throughout the course of the race, he had a whole analogy between chipping away at their starting position, which was 31st, and they incrementally moved their way toward the front of the field. And at the end of each stage, they were a little bit closer to the front of the field. And every time he said, just another bite out of the elephant, boys. So, so that was interesting, too. Great personality that Derek's showing. And, again, that team is just gelling. And it's a lot of fun to watch, a lot of fun to listen to.
Yeah. Do you guys notice, both of you, how the 60 team is it's really starting to put together a nice little fan base? And I think people are really into Ryan Preece driving for Roush Fenway Keselowski in that 60 car. The car's got history. The numbers got history. It looks cool. We saw it on the track a little bit last year, and I don't know if you can feel it there, but I feel like as a fan, there's been a lot of people talking about the number 60 team. Do you feel that?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, everybody, all your real dedicated fans, I think, like Ryan's story, right? He's a guy that's just worked and scratched and clawed to get to where he's at. Certainly didn't just, come in with a big checkbook to get to where he is. And I think people respect that, like that, cheer for that, all those things. So, yeah, Ryan's doing an outstanding job so far this year.
Anecdotally, I saw that at the souvenir rig this past week, the line for Ryan Preece's autograph was pretty long, and that was a good sign. Yeah, it was longer. Yeah. There were two drivers there. I won't say who the other one was, but it seemed like Ryan's line was a little bit longer. Maybe.
I'm telling you, he's going to get in victory lane soon, and you just wait. You just wait. The guy's going to be big time. I'm a big Ryan Preece believer, if you can't tell. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back. We have much more on the way with Josh Shell, the competition director for RFK. We'll continue next right here on Backstretch Banter with RFK. Welcome back to Roush Fenway Keselowski's Backstretch Banter on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio Channel 90. I'm Chris Childers, Mike Massaro from RFK with me today, my co-host and our guest, Josh Shell. We are going to Martinsville this weekend, coming off of Miami Homestead. Great momentum for the 60 and the 17. The 17 finished number 6 last week, so he's feeling good about things. Hopefully the 6 car can pick things up a little bit this week. It would be great to see everybody finish in the top 10, but certainly there is momentum. We talked a little bit about Martinsville earlier, but let's get a little deeper into it. No option tire at Martinsville this weekend. I know the 60 car says they want them at every short track. Josh, your opinion on the tire situation going to Martinsville, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the option tire, my take on it is kind of probably twofold. Number one, I think it's been beneficial to help us kind of iterate the tires forward and kind of prove how soft we can get and how much fall off we can get out of the tires. So I mean, I think as an experiment, it's been a positive. The other thing I would say is, I would rather, as we look forward to the playoffs and the championship race and all those things, I would rather kind of either get all in or get all out of the option tire business and say that we're going to either run them at all the short tracks or just let's stick to, no, this is going to be a one-off and kind of use it for real world in-race tire development. Kind of just pick a path there, and either one's okay with me. It's, the rules are the same for everyone. So just pick a direction there, and we'll figure out how to make the most out of it.
Makes it more manageable.
Yeah.
I mean, you can plan ahead that way a little bit easier, right? But the option tire, I mean, what were you hearing from fans about the option tire? I mean, I know I was hearing that they loved it. Were you hearing the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody that, watched what the 60 particularly was able to do driving from the back to the front there on the option tire, like, if that's not exciting and something that you like, maybe NASCAR's not for you. You know what I mean? Like, it was certainly entertaining to watch.
So just give me a glimpse into, how that all worked out between the three teams. Were they on different strategies intentionally, or did they get to choose which strategy they would plan?
I mean,
how to use those option tires?
Yeah, I think we had a lot of conversations going into the race, but you have to be kind of smart on your feet and able to kind of move to a different strategy when the opportunity presents itself. For the 60 particularly, especially at the start of the race, didn't have a lot of track position, and we're kind of in a low risk situation to do something different, and got to the front there, and that really changed the whole course of their day. 17 was more kind of in the middle ground all day, and saved their tires for when more of the rest of the field did, and it's kind of optimizing for different parts of the race. So it's certainly unique, throws another variable into the mix, but it's it's just another opportunity to try to do it better than the guy next to you.
I thought it made it fun. Now, Chris, you heard Josh say that he doesn't care which way NASCAR goes, all in or all out. Personally, I'd like to see him be all in, because it was it was fun to watch.
What do you think's more likely to happen? Both of you. What do you think's more likely to happen? All in or out?
I think out, personally.
Okay.
That's my I mean, and I can respect the fact that, whether it's a playoff race or the championship race, that variable, if a guy decides to hold off and save his option tires, and you end up winning the caution lottery, as I saw somebody say after Phoenix, and putting your option tires on at the right time, and that wins you a championship. Everybody can have a different opinion if that's the best way to crown a champion or not. So I can, from that perspective, I can understand some of the pushback there.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, Absolutely. It does make sense. And you said the word variable a couple times. This is the sport of variables. I mean, it really is.
Right.
This is the sport of variables. And you probably, how much more data and information and potential variables have you seen pop up having a third car, having more things to look at from a racetrack every single week? I got to believe it even adds to what you can look at from an information perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think, we've added certainly a third team. We've added Ryan as a driver. We've added some folks from, some other companies, and certainly there's a lot of information to take in. We have an alliance with Haas Factory Team that has been, I think, mutually beneficial, and we've been able to pick up some information there as well. So, certainly a lot to look at, and a challenge to piece through what's important, what can help you, and what things maybe don't have as much of an impact.
So many relationships too. Like you mentioned the Haas relationship, and you have to deal with the manufacturers and tire manufacturers, and it is literally the sport of variables. It is crazy how many different layers go into the racetrack on a Sunday. It's science. It really is. It is the sport of science, and you have to have Lady Luck on your side as well if you want things to work out and get you even anywhere near victory lane on any given Sunday. It's kind of a crazy sport that way. Josh Shell, our guest here, Backstretch Banter with RFK Racing. He is the competition director there. We go to Martinsville this week. 3 cars that he's hoping to get in a really good spot to have a position to win this race. Josh, when you look at just the attitudes of the teams week to week, can you tell that they're a little, like, let's just say the 6 compared to the 60 right now? We're early into the season, but I got to believe, maybe they're feeling different about where things are. How do you, as the competition director, make sure everybody's kind of level-headed, even keel, and able to do the job without the emotions getting too big or too small in some respects?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're 100% right. Those two groups particularly and all the groups really are in a little bit different headspace, but the answer is the same across the board. What happened last week, not to say that it doesn't matter, but it's done and it's in the past, and we've got to move forward to the next week and the week after that and put our best foot forward across the board. So yeah, that's the message, is to try to bring the people that are maybe a little bit down, bring them back up to kind of an even state, and the folks that are at a high, certainly don't want to bring them down, but also, reminder that, yeah, last week was great, but next week's the one that matters now, and past results are certainly not a guarantee of future performance.
I'm sure that was an interesting conversation when you consider that approach with the six. I mean, the six has a lot to really look forward to at Martinsville. Martinsville's historically been a really good racetrack for Brad Keselowski.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, if you look at the schedule here, there's a lot of really good racetracks for Brad and that group coming up. Certainly winning at Darlington last year. So yeah, just trying to keep everybody pointed in the right direction. And like I said earlier, Homestead's the first week where the performance has been not what we wanted. The rest of it seems like it's been more circumstantial. So just reminding everybody that it can turn back positive just as quickly as it goes negative, and to just keep fighting and pushing forward.
I know Brad's been racing a long time, but it still jumped off the stats page for me that he's led over 1,000 laps at that place. So a couple of wins, 1,000 laps led, not too shabby.
Yeah, for sure.
Not too shabby, to say the least, when it comes to Mr. Keselowski. Let's take a break. One more break. We'll come back with Josh. We are heading to Martinsville this weekend. By the way, I should tell you, the number 6 car is going to be adorned with a beautiful wrap, buildsubmarines.com. If you want to know more about it, just go to that website, buildsubmarines.com. If you're looking for an awesome new career, you can find it there. Kroger, heck, I go there probably twice a week. Old El Paso is going to be on the car. And then Fastenal for the number 60, which has been a great partner for years with RFK. So we'll take a break, talk more about this week and what's going on with this great team next right here on Backstretch Banter. We're back on Backstretch Banter, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90. I'm your host, Chris Childers, Mike Massaro, alongside from RFK, and Josh Shell is our guest today, the competition director for Roush Fenway Keselowski. We go to Martinsville this week, coming off of a pretty darn good week for the team last week in Miami. Had a couple of cars that finished in the top 10. This week we go to Martinsville, but there is a test coming up I wanted to talk about in Michigan next week, a Goodyear tire test. The tires we've mentioned already are a big part of this, Mike. Or Josh. So what are we hoping to learn when it comes to the testing for Goodyear at Michigan next week?
Yeah, I mean, I think Goodyear's looking at this as an opportunity to do some development for future intermediate racing. It's looking at the forecast right now, it looks like it's going to be chilly. I think the highs are only going to be in the 40s, but certainly we get so few opportunities to go test and try to learn things and make our cars better that we've got to take, every opportunity and make the most of it. Chris obviously is a past winner at Michigan, so he's going to do the test for us and hoping to help Goodyear and at the same time gain some knowledge, gain some information to make our whole intermediate program stronger.
As Chris was talking about a little bit earlier on the show, this is a sport of variables. When you go to a test and it's 40 degrees, and when you go back there it's probably going to be 70, 80 degrees, how much of a difference is that going to make?
Especially at a place like Michigan where you can be so nearly wide open, even when you go back for the race. It'll be fast. It'll be a lot of on-throttle time. And, we'll have to be smart about the things that we try to learn and try to evaluate. Are you going to go there and dial in a setup to come back to your point when it's 40 degrees warmer? Probably not. But are there opportunities to learn things and make gains on our program? Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go and try to get the most out of it and be smart about what we try to bring home.
How long does it take? Like, how long is a test? Like, what goes into the testing? We always hear about it, but like, what exactly goes into it?
So next week we'll be on track from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. pretty much
So
straight
it's a
through.
long
Yeah,
test.
yeah,
It's like-
for both days. And normally by the time you get through a 2-day test, you've run at least one race distance, probably maybe 2 race distances, depending on the test and what you're trying to get done. So, yeah, certainly a long couple days. It's an added burden, added workload for both our race team guys that travel every week and our shop-based production group. But it's one of those things you have to do, and you can't pass up the opportunity to go learn and try to get better.
Knowledge is power.
That's right.
Does the driver get anything out of it? Like, do they learn anything? Or is
Yeah,
it
I
just,
think so. I mean, it's circumstantial. It depends on the track, depends on the situation. Chris did a tire test at Watkins Glen a few years back, and certainly that helped him. I think get acclimated to the next gen car on road courses and all those sorts of things. So yeah, I think it depends on the test, depends on the situation, but any time in the car is always a benefit.
We are getting close to a wonderful race this weekend. We cannot wait to watch it. It is going to be fun to see what the 6, the 60, and the 17 can do in Martinsville this week. I know we got a couple of minutes left to go. Mike, you are the PR man nowadays around the shop. Anything you want to make sure anybody knows about the sponsors or Kroger or Fastenal or anything going on as we clean up things at the end here at RFK or at Backstretch Banter, I should say.
I just want to reiterate what we've already covered here, that there's a lot of racing left in the season, so can't get too high, can't get too low on any of our teams, but there's lots of good storylines. Certainly, I still think to this day that the Ryan Preece 60 storyline is one of the best in the sport. A team that came together just a couple of months ago from different teams to form one, and they are performing at a level that could potentially put them in the playoffs. So I think that's a great story. That's certainly one that I think people should pay attention to this week.
Well, if the season ended today, we'd have 2 teams in a really good position, and it'd be nice to have 3 when it's all said and done. But that's why we have a great competition director to ensure that wonderful
No
things.
pressure, Josh.
Yeah, no problem.
No pressure, Josh.
Yep.
But you gotta love it, right? I mean, the fact that you got this, is this not a? Would you want to do anything else? Seriously?
No. I mean, I think there's that pressure is a privilege saying, and I think that's true, right? Like knowing that we can go to the track each week and any of our teams can have a chance to win and compete at a high level. Like that's all you can ask for.
It's off the charts. It really is. And this team, I think, has done a lot over the last couple of years to put itself in a position to have success on the racetrack. Not the biggest group, but certainly a mighty one, and one that is very, very efficient with what they do. And there's no question you guys work your butts off on a daily basis. And as fans, we see it. We see the fruits of the labor, and we appreciate it. And it's so exciting. Like last week, for example, just watching Chris and watching the 60 have success, I thought about everybody that I've talked to on this show, and you can't help but smile. You really can't, especially last week, getting to know Derek Finley a little bit and getting to know his personality. Cool to see a guy like that who's been in the sport forever have this kind of success as a crew chief. But Josh, a pleasure. Thank you, and good luck this week, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Good to see you.
Josh Sell, competition director. We are done. For the great Mike Massaro of RFK, I am Chris Childers, and we thank you for listening to Backstretch Banter.